Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Thanks God that today in the second meeting we can meet again in the subject of Indonesian history of the colonial era or colonial period. Because today is the second meeting, so I would like to explain my content in English. For starting our lecture, let's we recite together Basmalah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Well, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, my student, allow me to share screen. Okay, so last week I have shared with you in the Bahasa Indonesia, explaining to my student about the introduction of the Indonesian history in the time of colonial, and particularly in that time that Indonesia, or in that time called as the Indonesian Archipelago, is very critical and important for the colonial powers, because the product of spice is very needed for the European countries. You know, spice, rempah-rempah, and particularly Maluku Island as the center of spice is very critical. Because of that, there's many colonial powers from European countries, particularly Portuguese, Spain, came to the Maluku Island. And then, of course, they were rivalry or competition between Portuguese and Spain. And entering to the 17th and 18th century, these two superpowers, Portuguese and Spain, became step down from the historical stage. And starting at 17th century, there's the new emerging colonial power as the new superpower, what we call as the Britain, Dutch, France, Germany, and so on and so forth. So today I would like to share with you related to how the new colonialist power from European countries, particularly the Dutch colonial government, will become the dominant factor in Indonesian archipelago. Okay. Because of that, we share and discuss or explain about how the origin of the Dutch colonial power in Indonesia, since, for example, 17th century until 20th century. So by decreasing or step down of the Portuguese and Spain from the Maluku Island, as we know, there's the Tordesillas and Saragossa Agreement, you know, between the Portuguese and Spain. And there's also the opposition and what is rejected from the Islamic kingdom in Maluku Island, particularly from the Ternate and Tidore kingdom to the Portuguese and Spain. And Ternate in Tidore kingdoms in Maluku Island collaborate with the what we call as the VOC. VOC, it is the Dutch language, Verenigde Oost-Indisch Company. I think it is the a company about the East Dutch related to the business, related to the trade in the Indonesian archipelago. So as the business organization or trade organization of the Dutch, this new policies tries to negotiate also with the Tidore and Ternate kingdom. And slowly but surely, step by step, this VOC can dominate it in the Maluku Island. As we know that POC was established in 1902, and I think the prominent figure as the initiator or establisher of the POC is Governor Peter Bot. As the Dutchman, he tried to expanding the POC in spice trading in Maluku Island, and then can defeat the Portuguese and Spain colonialists from the Maluku Island. Because of that, in 17th century, POC can monopolize, particularly spice trade in Maluku Island. So the monopoly system in trading and spice business, for example, is very critical because it is also indicated that economic domination was belong to the POC power as the business or trade organization owned by the Dutch figure. The main problem for the POC is how can make the other area in Indonesia step by step can also dominated or invited by the POC. Because of that, since early 17th century, POC tried to search and find out about the area, about the strategically in position for trading activities in Indonesian archipelago. In this context, I think we can now about the history of how the POC organization searching the center for trading, and finally find out about the Sunda Kalapa, or now as the Jakarta, as the center of trading, not only in trading, but also finally also in the administration. So the prominent figure in finding about the strategic area for trading initiated by the POC is or was the Jan Pieter Sun Kun. So Jan Pieter Sun Kun is the prominent figure or the first governor of the VOC in Jawa, particularly in Sunda Kalapa or in Batavia, and now become the Jakarta, as the center of administration and center of trading. Of course, in the 17th century, about the spice trading, but Jawa, I think not only Java Island is not only about the critical island in Indonesian archipelago, in which the spice from the Maluku Island, for example, can also import to Java, and from Java, this spice can also distribute to the, for example, Malacca in Malay Peninsula, to India, and to others area around the world. So Java Island, as in 17th century, seen by the Dutch colonial government, is very critical, very strategically, because if we see about the map of Southeast Asian countries or Indonesian archipelago, Java is very critical. In Java Island, they ask the Sundani Strait, and then in the west region, and in the north region, they ask the Malacca Strait. Because of that, the position of Java Island was strategically for trading, for administration, and for managing whatever related to the colonial interest in politics and economy, in social and other. So there's the movement from the Maluku Island to the Java Island, particularly because the Java Island is very strategically for the Dutch colonial government. And Java Island also has the rich resources, not only spice, but also there's the product of forest, for example. So rich resources, natural resources in Java. Why Java become the rich resources? Because in Java Island, there's many mountains, active volcanoes. Because of that, the land in Java Island is very fertile and good for agriculture. So there's many agriculture for the Java Island, not only about the spice like in Maluku Island. So moving the center of administration, the center of trading from Maluku Island to Java, it was initiated by the POC government. Of course, when a POC established the center of trading or center of administration in Sunda Kalapa, in Java Island ourselves, in that time, there's the two prominent kingdom, two big kingdom, particularly Mataram in central Java and Banten in western Java. And as we know that between these two kingdoms, there was the rivalry, the competition. Because of that, POC tried to negotiate, and also what we call as the using divide and rule. I think in the Bahasa Indonesia is a politik adu domba, you know. So how the competition, the rivalry between the Mataram kingdom in one hand and Banten kingdom in others, try to make these two kingdoms became the weakness, not as the strong power in what is competing with the POC power. And as we know, the big problem for the Indonesian archipelago kingdom or kingdom in Indonesian archipelago since in the past time until currently is about we call as the succession matters. The process of transfer of power, for example, from the king to his young king or the prince it is become the big problem. In this context, I think VOC try to make intrigue and also what we call is involved in the process of succession, succession, you know, how to transfer of power from one king to the successor, the young king. It is become the big problem for the many kingdoms in Indonesian archipelago. As we know, in Mataram kingdom, for example, from Sultan Agung to Amangkurat I, it is also become the problem. And from Amangkurat I to Amangkurat II, it is also become the problem. And in this internal dynamic, POC try to making the intrigue and involve, particularly maybe supporting the young sprint in one hand and rejected to other candidate of king, because, for example, the candidate king supported by POC is preferable and good, what is benefit from the POC ourselves. With Mataram, with Banten Kingdom also similar. As we know, for example, from Sultan Ageng Tirtayasa to the Prince of Sultan Haji, there's also the problem related to transfer of power. And in this context, POC supported the Sultan Haji because the political attitude of Sultan Haji is preferable for the POC government. So although POC facing the what is opposition from the many kingdom in Jawa, in Sumatra, in Sulawesi, and also in Malay Peninsula, but this is the competition between modern organization and traditional organization. It is the competition between POC as the modern management style with the many kingdoms in Indonesian archipelago who that's managing with the traditional manner. Of course, in this context, the competition between the POC in one hand and the kingdoms in Indonesian archipelago, the winner is the POC. Okay? So POC try to negotiate, try also involved in intrigue about the succession affairs in each kingdom in Indonesian archipelago. So, for example, the rivalry or confrontation between POC and many kingdoms, particularly Islamic kingdom in Indonesia, for example, between POC and Mataram, POC and Banten Kingdom in Jawa, the winner is POC. Because in Mataram Kingdom ourselves, in Banten Kingdom ourselves, there's the big problem in the how the continuity of the power from the one king to others, from the one king to successor, the next king. I think it is become the critical problem not only for the Mataram Kingdom and Banten Kingdom in Jawa, including also Mataram, what is Makassar Kingdom in Sulawesi Island, for example. As we know, in South Sulawesi, there's the many kingdoms, and one of the prominent kingdom is the Goa Talo, and then become the Makassar Kingdom. But Makassar Kingdom ourselves must patching the other rivalry with the other kingdom in South Sulawesi. And one of the kingdom who become the competition with the Makassar Kingdom is, for example, Bone Kingdom. Because of that, there's the rivalry between the Sultan Hasanuddin in one hand and Arung Palaka in others. And in this context, POC supported the Arung Palaka because Sultan Hasanuddin was not preferable with the political interest or economic interest of the VOC. Of course, in this conflict between the Makassar and VOC, assisted by the Arung Palaka of Bone Kingdom, finally, the winner is the VOC. Including also in Sumatra. In Sumatra, there's the Aceh Kingdom. And one of the prominent king in Aceh Kingdom, for example, Sultan Iskandar Muda, Sultan Iskandar Sani, and so on and so forth. And in rivalry and competition with the POC also collaborate, for example, with the Johor Kingdom, with the Kedah Kingdom, and in 17th century also, the VOC occupied the Malacca Kingdom from Portuguese. So because of that, in Sumatra also, many Islamic kingdom, slowly but surely, step by step, can also dominated by the POC government or POC power. Okay, so we can understand why the POC finally become the winner or the dominant factor in the Indonesian archipelago, particularly can dominated many Islamic kingdom in Indonesian archipelago. I think although the POC as the business organization or trade organization, but by the Dutch government ourselves from the Netherlands, POC what is have or had the special rights, what we call as the there are many special rights, for example, for making the soldier, for making the agreement with other parties, for monopoly in trading, and so on and so forth. Because of the POC, although it's the economic business or trading organization, but like the state, there's the many apparatus in the POC, and of course, because POC became the big organization, and the area in Indonesian archipelago also there's the big insights. The POC need many budget. Okay, lot of budget, for example, for salary, for making the bureaucracy, and also other business and economic matter should be good and running well. Because of that, with the area inside there's the big, it is become the problem for the POC ourselves. Because of that, in the last 18th century, POC became the bankrupt, you know, bankrupt because there's many problems, not only in managing financial manner, but also there's many civil servant or employee of POC should be giving the salary. So there's the needed a lot of money for making the bureaucracy of the POC in Indonesian archipelago can be running well. Okay. So in 1799 or in the last 18th century, POC become the bankrupt. And then what the legacy of the POC with the big territory in Indonesian archipelago. In this context, because POC is the business or trade organization, finally the POC should be transferred its power to the Dutch colonial government. So from the business or economic organization in the early 19th century substitute by the directly colonial government, or what we call as the Hindia Belanda, the East Dutch, what is Hindia Belanda? The East Dutch India. Okay, so uh, it is what we call as the transition period from the POC to the Dutch colonial government, and in Dutch colonial government, particularly in the early 19th century, Indonesian archipelago also was occupied by the Britain colonial government. As we know, in 18th century, 19th century, and 20th century, there's also the rivalry between the new superpower in colonial and imperialism power, what we call as the Britain colonialists and the Dutch colonialists, particularly in Indonesian archipelago. And for example, from 1811 to 1816, Jawa, Sumatra, for example, occupied by the British, by the Britain, and from 1916 to 1942, there's also the Dutch colonial government directly or indirectly occupied the Indonesian archipelago. What is important here also, we should be understand about the London Convention or London Agreement. It is the agreement, political agreement between the Dutch colonial government in one hand and the Britain colonial government in others. The London Convention is very important because this is the agreement in which the border of territory between the territory for the Dutch colonial government in one hand and the territory for the Britain colonial government was very clear. And it is still become the official border until now. For example, the Kalimantan Island or the Borneo Island, based on the London Convention, the Borneo Island should be separated between the territory of the Britain colonial government in the north region and the Dutch colonial government in the south region. In this context, for example, in the currently situation, why, for example, Sarawak, Sabah, and Brunei, although still similar in the Kalimantan Island, not belongs to Indonesian territory, but to Malaysia or Brunei political territory, because it is based on the London Convention result. Okay, so the agreement in London Convention in 1824 is very critical because there's the border, the line border, batas-batas garis between the Dutch colonial government territory and the Britain colonial government territory was very clear, including also Sumatra Island and Malay Peninsula. As we know, traditionally, between the Sumatra Island and Malay Peninsula or Tanah Melayu, it is the one culture, what we call as the Malay culture, Malay civilization. But based on the London Convention, between Sumatra Island and Malay Peninsula, separated, different in political matters. Okay, so Convention London is very, very important because it is become the origin of the territory border in political border, for example, between the Indonesian territory and Malaysian territory. So as I have mentioned that between Sumatra Island and Malay Peninsula in one culture in Malay, but because the colonial government is different between the Britain and the Dutch, because of that, this similar culture became the different in political methods, including also the Kalimantan Island. One island, there are 3 nation states now, okay? In Kalimantan, there's the Indonesian government, Malaysia government, and Brunei Darussalam government. Okay, so it is a result of the London Convention in 1824. Okay, so let's concentrate to the how the territory of the Dutch colonial government after the London Convention. I think, as I have mentioned earlier, that the Indonesian archipelago is the country that's rich in natural resources. Okay? In this country, not only the spice, but also what we call as the forest product, forest product, hasil-hasil hutan. And in mid 19th century and last 19th century, there's also the new finding about the resources. Not only about the natural resources, but in the last 19th century, there's the mineral resources. And mineral resources is very important because in European countries, particularly in Britain, in the Netherlands, in other countries, there's the industrial revolution. Industrial revolution is very critical because needed about the mineral resources, sumber daya mineral. Okay, there's many kind of mineral. For example, oil. Okay, crude oil. There's the coal, batu bara, coal. There's the iron, besi. There's the tin, timah, and so on and so forth. It is needed for the industrial revolution, particularly for the European countries. Indonesian archipelago had the rich not only natural resources, but also mineral resources. In this country, there's the oil, the bauxite, the coal, batu bara, the tin, timah, uranium, nickel, and so on and so forth, until now. So it is the mineral resources that's needed by the European countries, because in these countries there's the industrial revolution. Okay, so because of that, it is also very important for the Dutch colonial government how to occupy and to dominate many area in Indonesian archipelago in order can managing directly or indirectly by the Dutch colonial government. For example, for 1830 to 1870, for example, because particularly Java and Sumatra Island is the rich resources in land. There's the what we call as the cultivation system, Kulturstelsel. There's the new product in the agriculture, not only about the rice, wheat, paddy, and sawah, and so on, but also there's the new agriculture preferable for exporting. There's the sugar, for example, sugar, gula, tebu. There's also the tea, teh. There's also the, for example, the coffee, They have also the tobacco and so on and so forth. And this natural resources is very important for exporting, organized by the Dutch colonial government as the center of market for these natural resources, sugar, coffee, tea, for example, quinoa, and others concentrate also in European countries. So the critical problem for the Dutch colonial government, particularly in the 19th century, from 1830 to 1870, is how the agriculture system can make the benefit for the Dutch colonial government. Okay, so in this context, I think the colonial government, the Dutch colonial government, also optimized about the management system related to the many kingdoms in Java, for example, and also in Sumatra. As we know, in Java Island, they are still established about the Mataram kingdom. For example, in Central Java, there's the many what is the Mataram kingdom? For example, the Yogyakarta kingdom, and then Surakarta kingdom, and then Paku Alaman kingdom, and also the Mangkunegaran kingdom. It is what is the former Mataram kingdom, and then become the many kingdoms in Central Java. Meanwhile, Banten kingdom in Western Java, the end of her history because abolished by the Daendels government. So Daendels government makes the Banten kingdom ending in history because the ruler or the king of Banten kingdom cannot collaborate with the Daendels government. Because of that, Banten abolished in 1813 in early 19th century. So the Banten and then the Priangan area directly occupied and also managing by the Dutch colonial government. However, in managing the area in Western Java in which there's no kingdoms, of course, the Dutch colonial government also using native official or native employee, what we call as the Bupati, Wadana, and so on and so forth. So directly here in managing the colonial government from the governor general until to resident or assistant resident. Meanwhile, in the lower, middle, or lower manager, there's the native official from Bupati, Wadana, Camat, Lurah, and so on and so forth. It is the system what we call as the indirect rule. So direct rule is from the governor general to assistant resident, and including also controller, and indirect rule is from the Bupati to the lower level. It is for the area in which there is no kingdom, like in Banten, like in Priangan, in West Java area. Meanwhile, in the Central Java, in which there's the available about the Mataram kingdom, Yogyakarta, Surakarta, Paku Alaman, Mangkunegaran, POC try to negotiate and also makes the collaboration with the what we call as the attending and also making the representative of the Dutch colonial government, called also as the resident. For example, there's the representative president in Yogyakarta, representative of resident as the representative of Dutch colonial government in Surakarta, and so on and so forth. So not directly occupied or managing the Islamic kingdom in Java Island. So there's the two pattern in managing the Indonesian territory recognized by the Dutch colonial government directly and indirectly. Directly is if the area there's the no Indonesian kingdom like in West Java, in Banten, including also in Sumatra. Meanwhile, for the area in which there's still established about the Islamic kingdom, like in Mataram, like in Kalimantan, also there's the what is the collaboration or also the negotiation, and the Dutch colonial government try to make the representative as the resident and advisor of the Islamic kingdom in Indonesian archipelago. Okay, but as I have mentioned earlier, the big problem for Islamic kingdom or the kingdoms in Indonesian archipelago is about the transfer of power from one king to other king. And when there is the internal dynamic, internal conflict in the kingdom, the Dutch colonial government, of course, will support it or will preferable with the prince Putra Mahkota who has the good attitude and good political attitude with the Dutch colonial government. Okay, I think it is about the method or the strategy of the Dutch colonial government, how to make the kingdom in Indonesian archipelago finally become the defendant kingdom, okay? Not independent kingdom. Okay? Kerajaan yang tergantung to the political and economic domination of the Dutch colonial government. So in this context, there is the critical question, particularly from the Dutch scholars about the how long time Indonesian archipelago occupied or colonized by the Dutch government. 350 years, or just, for example, 30 years. So G.J. Ersing, in his book Indonesian Between Myths, said that the Indonesian archipelago occupied or colonized by the Dutch colonial government is just 30 years, because in the early 20th century, there's many areas still independent. There's many kingdoms in Central Java, Mataram, Yogyakarta, Surakarta, Papua Alaman. It is the independent kingdom, including also in Kalimantan, in Makassar. So according to Gizi Ersing, it is the independent, not as the colonized kingdom. But according to Indonesian leaders ourselves, of course, besides there's the independent kingdom in Indonesia, there's also many areas in Indonesian archipelago in which there's no kingdom, such as in Western Java, in Banten, in Sumatra, and others area in which they are directly occupied or managing by the Dutch colonial government. Okay, I think it is still the bad thing about how long Indonesian archipelago occupied or colonized by the Dutch colonial government. Okay. Okay. However, the Kulturstelsel or agricultural system should be end in 1870 because since 1870 there's the new policy from the Dutch colonial government, particularly from the private enterprise, perusahaan swasta, should be also managing about the natural resources in Indonesian archipelago. Because of that, since 1870, there's the liberal economic era in which the private enterprise dominated in the Indonesian archipelago. There's the many state enterprise or private enterprise, perkebunan, such as the tea plantation, the tobacco plantation, the sugar plantation, organized by the private enterprise in Java, in Sumatra, and others. So it is the era of the liberal economy in which the private enterprise was dominated in the Indonesian archipelago. However, about the era of liberal economy or liberal policy for the Dutch colonial government to the private enterprise, there's also many impact for the Indonesian people. Of course, there's the process of modernization. There's the process of what is monetarization, in which the modern economy penetrate to the traditional community. There's the building of infrastructure, for example, the railway, jalan kereta api, maybe also highway, for distribution of the product private enterprise or private plantation. So the building of railway, for example, from many cities in Jawa, from Jakarta to Bandung, to Semarang, to Yogyakarta, to Surabaya. I think it is the product of modern economic and also modern management by the private enterprise and also the Dutch colonial government. So in this context, I think the period of modern Indonesia, according to the Dutch colonial government, started with the 19th century, particularly the last 19th century, in which the modern economy and also building the infrastructure, highway, railway, harbor, including also airport. I think it is built in last 19th century. So I think it is about the liberal economy since 1870 to early 20th century. Because as we know, in the early 20th century, Indonesian history will entering to the new period, what we call as the ethical policy, okay, politic ethics. I think it is the new period in early 20th century, and it is become the end of the liberal economy policy for that colonial government. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my student, I have lectured you in maybe in 1 hour. Okay. Okay. I would like to end about my lecture, but before ending about this lecture, maybe there's any question or any comment from the representative of female student or female student. Any comment or any question in the bahasa Indonesia, of course, also okay. From the representative of female student or male student.
Pak. Saya, Pak.
Okay, Salma Febriani as a representative of female student, please.
Izin bertanya mengenai tadi Bapak menjelaskan tentang apa ya, kekuatan spesial apa ya, keistimewaan yang diberikan oleh pemerintah Belanda kepada VOC. Salah satunya itu membangun armada, terus memonopoli apa sih, rempah-rempah dan lain sebagainya. Nah, apakah pemerintah Belanda itu tidak takut jika VOC nantinya menjadi semakin kuat, akhirnya bisa mengambil alih kerajaan Belanda? Begitu, Pak. Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you very much for Salma Febrianti. What your critical question? I think POC is the business organization, you know. So it is the businessman, businesswoman. So I think it is no problem for the Dutch colonial government in the Netherlands about the businessman power, okay? Because as the businessman, as the businesswoman should be loyal to that government, okay? So because of that, I think although there is the special right for the POC leaders in Indonesian archipelago, but there's just economic organization, just business organization, just a trading organization, not fully interesting with the political matters. About the political matters, I think it is depend on fully to the center of government in the Netherlands. Okay. I think like in Indonesia, for example, the conglomerate, you know, there's many the businessmen of Indonesian people, and then they, for example, making the business or trading in abroad, for example, maybe in many areas in Africa. I think it is proud for the Indonesian government because there's the many Indonesian businessmen dominated in Africa, for example, in Latin America. Not as the threat. It is the opportunity, the good, the benefit for the center of government to the businessman or business woman who also benefit for the step. Okay. But when the POC is the economic organization was bankrupt, it is become the responsibility for the Dutch colonial government or the Netherlands kingdom to what we call as the substitute, okay? The transfer of power, the transfer all matters from the POC administration belongs to the Netherlands kingdom or the Dutch colonial government. Okay. So there is no state in the state, bukan negara dalam negara. Okay, there's the POC as the sub organization in the big step of the kingdom of Netherlands or Netherlands administration or the Dutch colonial government. Okay, Salma. Okay, the representative from the male student, maybe any question or comment?
Izin bertanya, Bapak.
Okay. Muhammad Rashid Ridho Abdul Waris, please.
Baik, saya izin bertanya, Pak. Sebelumnya seperti yang Bapak sampaikan mengenai tanam paksa, yang ingin saya tanyakan, apakah ketika kebijakan tanam paksa itu menyeleweng dari hal yang seharusnya, bagaimana reaksi dari para kerajaan-kerajaan Islam, itu kerajaan-kerajaan seperti pecahan Mataram, Yogyakarta, Surakarta, dan kerajaan-kerajaan Islam lainnya menghadapi penyelewengan sistem tanam paksa yang mengakibatkan rakyat menderita, Pak. Mungkin seperti itu.
Okay, thank you very much, Muhammad Rashid Ridho, about your critical question. I think about the agricultural system or cultivation system. I think I don't know why in Indonesian language translated to be the tanam paksa. I think not tanam paksa. Maybe agricultural system or cultivation system is sistem penanaman baru. Okay. But why translated in the bahasa Indonesia become the tanam paksa? I think maybe the what in neutral terminology. Okay. So let me see about the cultivation system. Cultivation system organized by the Dutch colonial government, particularly in the area in which there is the no kingdom of power, no kingdom in that territory, particularly in West Java, in Banten, in Sumatra. Meanwhile, in the territory of kingdom like in Mataram and so there's the no agriculture or cultivation system. There's cultivation system in Indonesian kingdom, particularly in Mataram kingdom. There's the collaboration. There's the agreement between the Dutch colonial government and with the Mataram kingdom, for example. In this case, it's not directly, but indirectly by leasing, for example. Menyewa, dia menyewa, menyewa tanah kerajaan, and the land, what is maybe leasing or lending by the Dutch colonial government. It is the joint venture between the Dutch colonial government and the Islamic kingdom in Central Java. So the agricultural system or cultivation system directly organized in the area in which there is no Indonesian kingdom, such as in Western Java. In Western Java, also in what is operation, there's also still indirect system because the direct organization about this cultivation system is the native official from the Bupati, the Wadana, Lurah, and Camat. So your critical question about the abuse of power, I think there's many cases conducted by the native official because there's the feudal culture, for example, because there's the what we call as the traditional system. Maybe from the Dutch colonial government, this is the budget for how to upgrading about the product of coffee, for example, in Priangan. But this budget received by the Bupati, for example, but by Bupati to the grassroots level, there's the no for the people in the grassroots level or ordinary people, because there's the obligation for the grassroots level or ordinary people to the Bupati, to the Wadana, to the Camat. In this context, I think there's the abuse of power, including also the corruption. So I think we see objectively about the how management or operation of the cultivation system. Okay, because in managing cultivation system also, particularly in West Java, there's indirectly from the Governor General to the resident, assistant resident, and controller, or the white man, or the Dutchman, but from the Bupati, Wadana, Camat, Lurah, it is the native, what is official, native employer. And abuse of power, in many cases, is in the middle and level officer. Maybe you read about the Multatuli novel, okay? Written by the Deutschdecker. If we see about the story of the what is Saija and Adinda in Max Havelaar novel, there's many abuse of power. Of course, there's the collaboration between the Dutch official government and the native official government. But abuse of power, it is because there's the mix between the modern management in one hand and traditional management in the other. Until now, corruption, I think, in many cases, because it is not yet still clear between the modern organization in one hand and traditional management in other. Okay, so I think if we want to understand about the problem of cultivation system, including in the cases of abuse of power, let me see in the context of there's the two separation between the management style, modern management and traditional management. In traditional management, there's the feudal culture. Okay, there's the I think traditional culture. Meanwhile, for example, maybe in modern management, the manager or the employee should be based on the meritocracy. Meritocracy is professional manner. Meanwhile, in traditional management, not based on the meritocracy, but what is the nepotism, oligarchy, oligarchy, not meritocracy. Okay, I think let's we see about the cultivation system in the proportional perspective. Okay, and as we know that the cultivation system not only the negative impacts to Indonesian community, but also there's the many positive impacts, because with the cultivation system, there's the new cultivation what is product in which exported oriented. Indonesian people now about the tea, sugar, quinoa, what coffee. So beside the field or rice, Indonesian community now about the modern commodity for exporting to the overseas country. Jadi sistem tanam paksa itu memperkenalkan jenis-jenis tanaman baru. It is a positive impact, and until now, you know the enterprise or the perkebunan, the plantation in Indonesian, it is the legacy from the cultivation system. Okay, perkebunan teh, perkebunan tebu, perkebunan what else? It is the legacy from the cultivation system. Not only negative impact, there's the positive impact about the cultivation system. Of course, there's the abuse of power, and let's we analyze it based on the what is historical facts. Particularly, there's the mixed system between the modern management in one hand and traditional management in other. Okay, thank you, Rashidul. Well, ladies and gentlemen, my students, I think it is enough for lecturing today. Let's ending our lecture today by reciting together Hamdalah, Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin, and we will move or switch our lecture from the Zoom meeting in the WhatsApp group. I would like to see your brief comment or short comment in the WhatsApp group. Please ensure when you making the brief comment, you should be right about your full name and then your number of students and what kind of your brief comment, okay, in WhatsApp group until 18 o'clock or 6 o'clock PM, not EM, or what is WIB. Waktu Indonesia Bandung, okay? WIB. Okay, so please you make the brief comment in the WhatsApp group until 6 o'clock p.m. or in the evening, no more, okay? And the head of class also, please you collected about what the title for the poor people, okay? So until the third meeting, I want all students should have the fixed title for the people. And this title for the poor people will presented in the PPT, in the PowerPointers, because in the 5 meeting, so I just make lecture until 4 times. So in the 5 meeting, student should be presenting about his or her title or topic related to the poor people. And poor people ourselves should be collected in the last semester, okay? So don't worry about your poor people, because should be collected in the last semester. What is important for you, you should present your topic, your title in the PowerPointers, and there's many discussion, many presentation session in this lecturing. Thank you very much for your attending and for your concerning. Hopefully, all of you, most of you understand what I have talking about. Okay. So language should be practiced. Okay, not we learn about English still what is in elementary school until senior high school, but how we can practice this English in everyday life. Hopefully, the student of history study program can understand about the English as the international language, because as we know, ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nation ourselves, became English as the common language. So students in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Singapore, Brunei, Thailand, and other countries should be a mastery in English as common language for ASEAN. Thank you very much. Inshallah, we will meet again in the next week, and I would like to use other language. I will use the Malay language, okay, in lecturing about the SIMK, Sejarah Indonesia Masa Kolonial, Indonesian history in the colonial period. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, see you in the next time. Bye-bye.
Terima kasih banyak.
We can elaborate on this.
Sehat selalu, Pak.
Okay, thank you for your praying.